Welcome to Manatee Arts and Lecture Series. We are excited. We have a mighty group this morning. We may be small in numbers, but you are in for an enormous treat because we can tell you first and foremost that if you have not yet picked up a book or have read anything by Miss Nancy, you definitely do not want to leave today without buying one of the books outside. She's here to also sign it, but to pick one up for a friend. They are uplifting, they are fun, and they will keep you making sure that you stay up late nights to turn the pages to make sure that you get to the end, so you might have to call into work the following day. So, but it's my pleasure to, Nancy Cohen writes in the humorous Bad Hair Day mystery series featuring hairdresser Marla Vale. Several of these titles have made the Independent Mystery Booksellers Association bestseller list. Nancy is also the author of Writing the Cozy Mystery, a valuable instructional guide for writers on how to write a winning whodunit. Nancy's imaginative romances have proven popular with fans as well. Her titles in this genre have won the Holt Medallion and Best Book in Romance Sci-Fi Mysteries at the Romance Reviews. A featured speaker at conferences, libraries, and community events such as today, Nancy is listed in Contemporary Authors, Poets and Writers, and Who's Who's in U.S. Writers, Editors, and Poets. When not busy writing, she enjoys reading, fine dining, cruising, and outlet shopping. She is currently the president of the Florida chapter of Mystery Writers of America. Is that correct? Okay, so a warm welcome to Miss Nancy, please.
Hi, first I'd like to thank the Library Foundation and Janine and Sherry and Jamie and John and everyone for having me here today. I'm very honored and thrilled that you want to hear me speak. So I'm going to share with you a bit about my journey as a writer, because how I became a writer also influenced the type of heroines that I write about, which are strong female leads. So I'm going to take you back to the beginning when I used to go to the library, and we all love libraries, yes? Back then, and this may date me a bit, I read Cherry Ames, Judy Bolton, and Nancy Drew. Do you sound familiar to some of you? Well, Cherry Ames inspired me to want to become a nurse. And so I began toward that career by volunteering in a hospital. It was with the Red Cross back in those days, getting a summer paying position as a nurse's aide, and being on a track to go to college to study nursing. Nancy Drew gave me a love for mysteries. So I started reading mysteries as early as I guess I was around 10 years old back then. Now, Judy Bolton books taught me something different and very important. Judy Bolton was a mystery series also, but unlike Nancy Drew, she grew and changed, got married through the course of the series. Now, this is important. If you think about what you read and why you read a particular series, it's because you want to follow the main character. You're interested in their personal journey. Nancy Drew, a mystery happens every book, but Nancy doesn't change a whole lot. So this is where my influence as a writer also began. Then I went to nursing school, University of Rochester, way up north where it's cold and they have tunnels underground. And I didn't have an easy time of it. Back then we had to stay in a nurse's dorm. It was a very intense program. I almost flunked out twice. The first time was labor and delivery. Back in those days, we had to listen to the abdomen with a stethoscope-type device, and I was so anxious I couldn't hear the fetal heartbeat. So almost didn't pass that course, but persisted and made it through. The other class I almost flunked was pediatrics. I had never been a babysitter. I didn't know anything about healthy children. How could I care for sick kids? So that was really tough for me. But again, I really wanted to become a nurse. I persisted, I made it through, and I graduated. So then I got my first job at Massachusetts General Hospital as a registered nurse. And on the medical floor where I worked, there was a nurse in charge of new orientations like me, and it was tough. It was what in nursing we call reality shock, the difference between what you learn in school and what the job is really like. I was used to spending time talking to patients, hearing their fears and concerns. Well, the reality was that you didn't have time. You had to get your patient care done, move on to the next person. One night, a nurse asked me to call for help stat. The patient that she was taking care of was having a heart problem, and she needed help from the doctor right away. So I called for the doctor stat and went about my business. Well, the next day, I got called to task about this. It seemed that I should have gone back to the patient's bedside in case he arrested, so I'd be there to help the other nurse. And I almost got fired over this. But I didn't, because I really didn't know the difference. I hadn't studied cardiac nursing. I didn't know I was doing something wrong. So I was given another chance. Now, what did that do for me? It made me want to learn what I didn't know. And so I studied coronary care. I went for my master's degree and became a cardiovascular clinical nurse specialist. Persistence pays. You learn from your past mistakes. You move forward. This nurse who was in charge of orientation on that first year floor was one of those mean girl types. And she picked on me. She had to be the center of attention. And that was probably the most miserable year of my life. I went home and cried every night. But I was going to stick out that 1 year contract no matter what. And I did. And then I moved to Florida, and it was paradise and wonderful. But again, you learn from your mistakes, you move forward, you keep learning, and you persist. Do you begin to see the qualities of a writer here? Let me just turn the page. Okay. Now, as writers, we follow a similar path. We learn from other authors, like I learned from other nurses at workshops and seminars. As we gain experience in nursing or in writing, our skills improve. Quitting is not in our vocabulary. If you quit, you're done. If we quit as a writer, we'd never get published. If I said, my book isn't going well, I can't do it anymore, that book would never go into print. You don't give up. We have to adapt to the changing marketplace and be versatile to survive. Now, I wrote 6 books before one got published. I started learning how to write by buying a book called Structuring Your Novel while I was in grad school. It took me through all the steps on how to write a novel. That's how I learned. But learning wasn't over, since I had to write 6 books before I sold one. But again, persistence and practice pays. So you keep going. Now, at the 7th book, a friend of mine said, you like Star Trek, you read romance, why don't you write a futuristic romance? And I did. That was my first book that sold. That book won the Holt Medallion Award, and I went on to write 3 more futuristic romances for Dorchester. At that point, as often happens in the publishing marketing cycle, the trend for futuristics took a dive. So my agent said, "You're putting a mystery in your romances. Why don't you write a straight mystery?" Well, what am I going to write about? I love the plotting process for mysteries, but what can I do that hasn't been done before? By now, I had discovered Jill Churchill's mysteries. They were funny, amateur sleuth stories with creative titles, and that's the book I wanted to write because I like humor. I like to entertain, and I don't care to give my readers serious crime fiction, which you can get if you read the daily newspaper. I do want my stories to be uplifting and to leave you with a smile. So I'm thinking, what can I do that hasn't been done before that would be fun to research? So I'm sitting in the hair salon back in the days when we got perms, waiting for my timer to go off, watching the other ladies staring into space, waiting for their timers to go off. I thought, we need something gripping to read to kill time. Let's kill off one of these ladies. And that is how the Bad Hair Day mystery series was born. My hairstylist, Marla Shore, in the very beginning of the series, lives and works in sunny Palm Haven, Florida, which is really Plantation, where I live. So all these stories do take place in Florida, most of them, and I do get Florida issues into my stories. My heroine, Marla, is a beautician. She has great conversational and listening skills, which help her in her sleuthing. But she didn't have an easy path either. When Marla was a 19-year-old babysitter, the toddler that she was caring for drowned in the backyard swimming pool. Now, we know that child drowning is a prime cause of death for children ages 4 and under. So I thought this is a way I can get some preventive education measures into my book, a little bit way of educating the public. And I like to do that with different Florida issues throughout my series. I like to learn something new with each book, too. That makes it exciting and interesting for me. So in book 1, Permed to Death, Marla is giving Mrs. Kravitz a perm when she goes into the back room to get some clean towels. She hears a loud crash, rushes into the salon, and the lady is dead in the shampoo chair. And this is how the series begins. Now, 10 years later, Marla gets married to the detective who suspected her of being the killer in book 1. So she finally gets married off, spoiler alert, in book 10. In book 11, she and Dalton Vale move into a new neighborhood. This is Hanging by a Hair, where they discover a killer next door. Now, often personal experiences make their ways into my stories, and this one is based on, oh, we're being televised, a dispute we had with our neighbor. So I shouldn't go into it in too much detail, but that incident is the basis for Hanging by a Hair, and I got my revenge in that story. So you better watch out when you talk to a writer, because you never know where you'll end up. And Peril by Ponytail, which is my latest story, that's this one here. This is the advanced reading copy. Marla and Dalton finally go on a belated honeymoon to an Arizona dude ranch. Now, my husband and I went to an Arizona dude ranch. We had all the same experiences that Marla has in this story, and it was a fabulous trip. I had so much material, it was hard not putting all of it into the book. We stayed at the Haunted Jerome Hotel. They give you a ghost tour. This place used to be a hospital for copper miners. So they show you the former operating suite and x-ray room, the wards, and tell you all the ghost stories of people that died there. And then they give you your own electromagnetic meter and thermometer and stuff to carry around so you can continue to look for ghosts through the rest of the night. I was a little scared. We kind of stayed in our room, but that was a great experience. Marla does have some encounter with ghosts in Peril by Ponytail. We stayed on the Dude Ranch, which was better than I expected. I was thinking horses and trails. How many of you have been on a Dude Ranch? No, one person, okay. One, okay. Yeah, well, you think of it as horseback riding, hiking trails and such, but this one also had a day spa, a swimming pool, wonderful gourmet meals, so you could just lounge around and relax if you wanted to, and it was a very nice experience. We also did explore a copper mine at the Queen Bisbee mine, which was a cool experience. They put you in a set of overalls and a helmet and a flashlight. You get all dressed up in this gear, and then you sit astride a tram that carries you into the mountain. And there they have various stops where they explain the mining process, which was so interesting. I bought a couple of books on it, and that is also in Peril by Ponytail. So we had many adventures like that to go into the story, and I do that often for the books in my series. For example, in Hair Raiser, I was curious about the little sharps boxes that are in your doctor's and dentist's office, you know, those red boxes. Well, what happens to them? Who picks them up? Where do they go? So I asked my dentist, and he gave me the complete biohazard disposal protocol. And then there is a plant in Davie that does that, so I went over there, interviewed one of the head honcho people who gave me a great clue for the book, and that's in Hair Raiser. Then at Epcot Center, riding through the land, if any of you have been on that ride, you see the wonderful vegetables growing, and then you go into a section with fish tanks. And one of the fish growing in there was tilapia. So, I don't know much about tilapia. Maybe it's a good fish to eat. So I went to the Nova Aquaculture Research Center in Davie, had a complete tour of their tilapia breeding facilities. Can tell you all you'd like to know about growing tilapia, but now it's a great fish. I love to eat it, and that is all in Body Wave. So my research, my personal experiences, new things that I'd like to learn with each book, they all go into my stories. So I went from becoming a nurse to becoming a writer, and then to putting a lot of these qualities into Marla, because Marla had to move on from her past mistakes, the babysitter incident. She had to grow past that. She had to learn to accept herself and become a better person. She has to be a good listener, keep learning her craft, and go after the killer in each book. So her qualities are similar to the qualities you need to be a writer, are similar to the qualities you need to become a nurse. So you see, we're all tied in together. And in that respect, Marla is part me. Now, she's braver than I am. I wish I had her guts to go forth and seek out a killer, but I would probably run in the opposite direction. She is a great conversationalist, and I like to think she has the nurturing soul of a nurse. She cares about how people look. You know, when you go to the salon and you come back, you feel better about yourself, more self-confident. You have an improvement in your self-esteem. And that's important for a hairdresser who wants to give you a good experience so you will come back to the salon, correct? Okay. Now, why do people read traditional mysteries? You can call my books traditional mysteries, or you can call them cozy mysteries. Some writers don't like that title, but I am proud of it. I am so proud of it that I wrote this book called Writing the Cozy Mystery. it hadn't really been addressed before. And so I did it short and sweet in this book, and I will read you what a cozy mystery really is. A cozy mystery can be defined as a whodunit featuring an amateur sleuth, a distinctive setting, and a limited number of suspects, most of whom may know each other. These stories contain no explicit sex or violence or bad language. While murder is usually the basis for the story, the focus of a traditional whodunit is on the solution rather than on the forensic details of the crime scene. The story presents a puzzle that challenges readers to solve the mystery. So you're reading it for the puzzle, to see if you can beat the sleuth to find the killer. You're reading it because they very often have a small town community feeling, and you get to know the characters who become your friends. And also, here's what someone recently said: readers love them. The sort of people who buy them are the sort who don't touch anything with a stamp of realism. They like the murder to be a bit like an Agatha Christie, where it doesn't really feel real, where there's not much blood or pain. So there's a bit of a fantasy element involved in a humorous cozy. We know it's not real. We know in real life things may not turn out as well as they do in the story, and that's why we read them, to give us a sense of justice, a sense of control over our destiny. Do you agree? You all agree? And hopefully we like the bit of humor as well. How we doing? Okay. Would you like to hear a little bit from Peril by Ponytail? Now, this scene, which does take place in Arizona, brings in some of the history of the region. And there's such a wealth of history there. It was so much fun to write about. This particular one, we were in a haunted theater in Tombstone. Anyone been over there? Tombstone, Arizona? Yeah, okay. So you probably were in the same theater, but let's see. All right, Marla's with Dalton and Dalton's Uncle Ray. Now, in this story, Uncle Ray owns the dude ranch that they're staying at for their honeymoon. He also owns the ghost town that he's renovating to bring in more revenue. Strange incidents have been plaguing both sites, and as Marla and Dalton dig deeper, they wonder if Uncle Ray is as blameless as he would like them to believe. So, she followed the men inside the ancient theater, which consisted of a hardwood floor, a stage at the far end, and box seats on either side at an upper level. The dingy chandelier didn't make for good lighting, but maybe an apparition would show when she put her photos online. And I got a lot of orbs in my photos, I have to tell you. I took pictures in these places and in the copper mines, and a lot of orbs showed up. So you can either believe they're spiritual entities or they are just dust molecules. Oh, let's see. Downstairs, they moved to a combination bar and gambling den. Here were dressing rooms for the performers, a bedroom, and a lavatory. Marla smelled perfume as she peered into the bedroom that retained its old furnishings. A mannequin lay on the bed, lending a note of authenticity with its period dress. "Why is the place supposed to be haunted?" she said. "Did someone die here?" A movement in her peripheral vision made her shoot a second glance at the bedroom. The hairs on her nape elevated. Where before she'd seen a figure, now the bed was empty. She swallowed with unease, but had enough presence of mind to snap pictures. Her imagination must be running wild. Raymond regarded her and stroked his jaw. "Well now, there's a tale about the two women who liked the same man, gambler Billy McLean. One evening, his girlfriend pulled a knife on the hussy chiseling in on her guy. Delilah died right here over a gaming table. Then we have the man who was shot to death in his box seat. Some folks claim they've seen his ghost still sitting there. Another guy committed suicide after losing his fortune at cards. Now, I didn't make this stuff up. This is what the tour guide told us. Okay. Marla was eager to leave the premises. While the history fascinated her, this place creeped her out. She still wondered about that figure on the bed. Raymond halted in the middle of the main floor facing the stage. I've had a hard time getting the workers to come in here. They've reported hearing footsteps, finding items move from one spot to another, their work being undone. They'll nail a section one day, and when they return, the nails are popped out. They might believe spirits are to blame, but I know better. Okay, then they go on to discuss the beliefs of the workers with the afterlife, which I won't bore you with at the moment. It's in the book. And finally, the only thing we have to fear is other people, not spirits. That's her husband stating this, and his statement put them firmly back on the ground. Marla glanced up as a shadow flickered in her peripheral vision. Was someone in the rafters? A rattling noise sounded right before the chandelier descended from above. So it gives you an idea of how I mix a little action with history, with ghosts, and it was just so much fun in that story. Yes, that was cool. Now, so I've taken you from writing my writing romance to writing mysteries, and then we come to another crossroads when, after 9 books, I had to change publishers. So this is what I mean by authors have to be versatile. The markets are cyclical, and they go up and down. Now, at this particular time, it was when cozies were taking a dive, thrillers were on the rise, and publishers were canceling cozy lines. At that time, there was nowhere else to go but the traditional publishers. And so my agent said, well, paranormal romance is on the rise. Why don't you write that again? And so I began the Drift Lord series for Wild Rose Press, which involves the descendants of Norse gods who come to Earth to save humanity from invaders from another dimension through the Bermuda Triangle. And I've written 3 books in that series. Meanwhile, a lot of changes happened in the publishing industry. Small press have risen, many small press that now publish mysteries of all subgenres. Self-publishing has become a viable alternative for many authors, if done properly, I might add. And so, if I had had this choice so many years ago, I wouldn't have had to switch. I could have kept on writing Marla. At the time, I had no choice. But now, as an author, we have many choices. So, while I'm also writing the Bad Hair Day mysteries, I did indie publish writing the Cozy Mystery that's doing very well. I also published my father's work. Now, my father, who's deceased, wrote an account of his journey across the United States hitchhiking in 1929. Full of adventure, told his story of how he became a self-reliant young man, and that is now published, which was a dream of his, in a book titled Thumbs Up by Harry I. Heller. So I'm very proud of that work. And it's great that we have these options now. I'm lucky that 5 Star picked up the Bad Hair Day mysteries, so these can continue. The next book coming is Facials Can Be Fatal. Beware when you go to the day spa. And for this, my father had written another work, a 1935 journey that he made to South Florida. And so I intertwined that history into this story, which made it especially meaningful to me. And that's in Facials Can Be Fatal. So if not my experiences, I draw from other people's or even from people that I meet. You never know when something you say may trigger an idea, and that goes into another book. So we have many choices today in the publishing world. But no matter which way you're published, you still have to do all your own marketing, letting you in on our secrets here. So all the paper goods, like bookmarks, postcards, brochures, all these print materials, we design and do ourselves. We do swag, like this fancy comb. See this comb? That's Bad Hair Day Mysteries. Buy a book, I'll give you one. So yeah, I mean, these are great things for conferences to put out on goodie tables and such. So we do online blog tours to get our name out there to readers, which means we guest post on other people's blogs, and we gain new readers that way, people who might not have been exposed to us otherwise. Website, Facebook, Twitter, please follow me everywhere, and yeah, because we are responsible for it all. So when does the writing get done? I wake up very early and write on a quota of 5 pages a day early in the morning. After that, all the rest of the day spent on marketing and email. So I usually spend 12 hours a day unless I have other things I have to do. It is a full-time consuming job. Plus we attend conferences, and I'm president of the Florida chapter Mystery Writers of America. And if any of you have an interest in writing, the writing community is extremely important. I credit joining Florida romance writers and getting into a critique group with getting published. So without that support, I don't think I would be here today. We really need each other. We need critique groups. We need editors. It's something you cannot do alone. You have to belong to a village or a community, whatever you'd like to call it. So now, I think it's a good time to take questions. So, yes, ma'am.
How did you make the switch from nursing? How did that happen when you moved to Florida?
From nursing, how did I make the switch from nursing to writing? Well, I was writing my practice books while I was practicing as a clinical nurse specialist in my spare time. And then when I married my wonderful husband right there, yes, I was able to retire from nursing and write full-time while raising a family. So I have him to thank for that.
How many in your family?
2 children, grown up on their own, which is great. Hope they'll read my book someday. Yes, sir.
Have you thought about writing about the publishing industry itself so you could kill one of those people off?
Good idea. Yeah, Mystery Writers Conference would be good for that. I'd have to work Marla, the hairdresser, in there. Oh, she could do their hair. That's a good one. Yeah. Yes.
How long did it take you to write your first book, as opposed to how long does it take you to write the average series now?
How long did it take me to write my first book? I would say 2 years. And now I can do it in about 5 months, not counting the time initially for research and plotting, and after for revisions. So maybe about 9 months altogether. It's more compressed because you get better. You learn from the editorial process. You learn so much from what your editors say that it does take a lot less time. And I do plotting. It's all my plotting secrets are described in this book. Usually I start with the victim, so I know who's going to die. And like in Facials Can Be Fatal, I know who the victim is. In Hanging by a Hair, it was the neighbor next door to where Marla and Dalton just moved into the new house. So then I figure, well, who has the most to gain from that person's death? And we examine their business associates, friends, and family, and see what kind of secrets might those people be hiding. And how do those secrets relate to each other? How does each one have maybe a motive for murder? And which one is the strongest motive? So I see it as sort of a spider web, with the victim in the center, the suspects as the spokes that go around, and the web, how they all relate to each other. So that's basically how I may create a plot. For 2 of my stories, I sent Marla and Dalton somewhere else. They go to the Dude Ranch in Peril by Ponytail. They go on a cruise in Killer Knots. This keeps it fresh for me, because I'm on book number 14, and other writers always want to know, how do you keep a series fresh? Well, it's not only about occasionally sending them somewhere else. Their relationships have to grow and evolve like they do in real life. And like I said earlier for the Judy Bolton books that I read, I also read Horatio Hornblower and loved that whole series because, again, I wanted to find out his progression as a character. So Marla grows and changes. She gets over her hang-ups about having children, which she started out with because of her tragedy in her past. She gets over that. She has to care for Dalton and his teenage daughter. The teenage daughter starts out a little bratty, and she soon comes to like Marla and ally with her, and they become a family. Family values are very important in my stories. I very often will start with a family scene or at least end with one, because I think it's important to show people coming together and valuing their loved ones. And that's part of my books as well. Yes?
Other than workshops, was there any other formal education as far as writing, or was it just sort of natural for you?
It was, I guess, well, it took me 6 books to finally get there. I don't know how natural, but self-taught mostly. Creative writing courses haven't helped me. I took one, and it's too general, not specific to the genre I wanted to write in. But writing workshops and conferences, writers' conferences, are extremely important. That's where you absorb not only writing craft, but also all the business aspects of writing. Because it is a business, we have to run it as one, and you only learn that from other seasoned authors. Do I get ideas from my hairdresser? Definitely, and my nail technician. I mean, she's great, but I'm sitting there getting my manicures done. I say, well, tell me what gossip you've heard lately, and tell me about interesting people you've met. I mean, she, in fact, gave me the characterizations for 4 women in the book I'm writing now, just telling me about some backgrounds of people. So yeah, I do a lot of research with my hairstylist. And one of the places that I attended was a beauty trade show. It was in Orlando at the time. I was in my hotel room one night when I heard somebody sobbing out in the hallway. So in true writer fashion for research, I put my ear to the door and eavesdropped. I heard the entire conversation, wrote it down, and that became the inspiration for Perish by Pedicure. And so hairdressers can be a great source. Anywhere that I am, that I overhear an interesting conversation. So my husband can tell you, he might be talking to me in a restaurant and my eyes are staring off into space, or I'm listening to the conversation at the next table. So yeah, ideas we can get anywhere, but my hairdresser is definitely a source of research, probably my prime source, because I'll go to her with a particular scene or even some hair just type descriptions for Marla working in the salon, and I'll say, is this right? So I'll have them read it over so I get it accurate, which is important. She just told me of a new concept for the hairdressers which amazingly enough, I found a news article like the next day on it, and this is hairdressers working in suites. Have any of you heard this concept? Instead of in a beauty salon, they have their own little private suite. So they don't have to pay a percentage of rent to somebody else. They're independent, and they have you in a private room. It's apparently an up-and-coming trend, so watch for that. More, how are we doing? All right. In a few minutes we have left, I want to tell you how important you are as readers. We love readers. And now with the advent of more indie publishing and fewer bookstores, we really need your reviews. People go online, they check out customer reviews, and these are very, very important to having other readers discover us. So whenever you finish a book, please write a customer review, whether it's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Goodreads. Whatever you can say about the book, it's really important and very helpful because you are becoming the new gatekeepers. It used to be the agent or the publisher, but readers can go direct online now, read the reviews, order books for themselves. So those reviews really count, and we are relying on you to provide them. More questions, come on.
Nancy?
Yes.
Do you have an agent or thing?
Do I have an agent? I do, yes. Mm-hmm.
You think that's pretty much a necessity for?
Is it a necessity? It depends on where you want to publish your work. If you're going with a traditional publisher, yes. If you're going with small press, you need to read the publishing guidelines because in some instances they may take unagented material. You can go to a writer's conference where they have editor-agent appointments and meet them personally that way. If you indie publish, obviously you don't need one. So it really depends, and you need to read the writing guidelines that are online. Yes?
I've always enjoyed your characters, other than Marley. You have some kooky, strange, and they're fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming these are mostly from real life, or you elaborate to get a snatch, and then...
Yeah, I get, where do I get my secondary characters? Sometimes I make them up, sometimes it's based on people I meet. For example, there was a reader who once used to own a dress shop. So she told me that a guy used to come into the boutique and try on ladies' clothes. So that became a secondary character, that person in Murder by Manicure, yeah. So it depends. Sometimes it's inspired by people I meet, sometimes not. There was another one in Killer Knots. When we were on a cruise, there was this lady who had beautifully coiffed white hair in the most gorgeous outfits with matching shoes. They almost looked like lucite shoes or glass shoes, matching her clothes. So I asked, where do you buy your clothes? And she said she buys them in France, in Paris, she said with a French accent. So I made her into the Countess in Killer Knots. People can be found anywhere. Yes?
Twitter and Instagram handle.
My Twitter, it's at Nancy J. Cohen. And my website is nancyjcohen.com. I think it's the same as Twitter. Also on Facebook, have a personal and author page. Also on Pinterest. Also on LinkedIn. Just find me anywhere.
Nancy, do you read for pleasure? And if you do, what kinds of things do you read?
Do I read for pleasure? I certainly do. I'm a reader first, and sometimes you write what you want to read but can't find out there. I like genre fiction, commercial fiction, because I like to escape and be entertained. I don't want stories that will remind me of what's in the news, so I do read humorous amateur sleuth mysteries, historical romance, futuristic romance, and science fiction fantasy. I like to be in another world when I read, and I hope that that's what I transmit to you with my books as well. Yes?
Do your stories ever take off in directions that you haven't applied and surprise you?
Do my stories take off in different directions than I expected? Yes. I write a complete synopsis before I begin writing. So I have that as a guide map, and I know where I'm going. But as I'm writing the story magic happens. And that's when characters do things I don't expect, or I get a plot thread I hadn't anticipated, and I'll go finish the story, then revise the synopsis afterwards. So definitely the story can take on a life of its own, and that's really exciting when it happens.
Do you write in longhand?
Do I write in longhand? I do not. I write on the computer using Microsoft Word, which is essential for writers because when you have an editor, you're exchanging the manuscript by email, and they are using track changes for the editing process. So you must be versatile in Microsoft Word. And always do backups. Backup, backup, backup. Yeah, very important, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your other series of books that you write,
Yeah, the paranormal romances that I write are the Drift Lords series. In these stories, warriors from space come to Earth to save us against an invasion by aliens from another dimension. And they need the help of a special group of Earth women with powers derived from the Norse god Odin. So the women in all of my romances have special powers. And these are related to the different elements like air, water, so forth. The women don't know that they have these powers, so each book, which focuses on a different hero and heroine, part of the team, tells how the hero meets the woman, how she develops her powers, and how they come to defeat the growing evil. So I use a lot of mythology based on Norse myths, like the movie Thor, if you've seen that, similar in concept, but with Earth women who have the powers. Yay, empowerment.